1976, the nation's 200th birthday, and the release of the debut album from a group that would define the sound of rock music in the 70s. The group is Boston. The album is Boston. Stay with us.
Get ready for the 3324 podcast, where lifelong friends Dean Legiro and Eric Kuber share their love of all things music and movies. Dean has directed short films and is a music trivia buff. And Eric, trained in audio engineering, brings his extensive knowledge of music and film to the conversation as they discuss, debate, and celebrate their favorite albums, films, and much more.
Welcome, friends, to the 3324 podcast. Another great episode. Thank you for joining us. If it's your first time, welcome aboard. There's a lot of stuff for you to go through if you're bored or if you feel like binging. There's a lot. You won't run out, right? Mm-hmm. There's plenty there.
Absolutely.
I think our friend Andy, we haven't had him on in a while. I think quite a few episodes ago, he calculated all the running times of the episodes. I think when we hit 10,000 downloads or something like that, and he said, yeah, this would, if you listen to everything, it's like a certain, it's like days worth of that you could listen to continuously without ever hearing something twice. Mm-hmm. That's kind of interesting. That's an interesting
it is. Yeah,
feeling
that's Andy's mind.
That's an interesting statistic that we've got that much material that you can just kind of listen to this stuff and for days.
Mm-hmm.
And
days and days and days and
just hear this, hear us and never hear us. Although you will hear us say the same thing multiple times.
I agree on no doubt there. There's absolutely no doubt about that. But and me saying or absolutely I mean that should be a T-shirt too, right, for the store. I think absolutely. Yeah. I think
it's going to be that's going to do it. That's the catchphrase. If you're new to the show, if you hear that's going to do it, that we're tying up the episode. Although sometimes our guests go past that when they run through the stop sign, and say, well, that's going to do it, and then they keep
myself going. Of that sometimes too. Just one more thought. I think that's
one more. Like, well, that's the signal that we're done.
Right? Yeah, but nobody listens to you.
That means all guests shut up.
Yeah, I mean, talking. I think we've moved past that as well. Nobody pays attention to that anymore.
It's out of control. It's out of control, even for both of us. So either way, if you're new, you can expect this kind of material. If you're returning, this is the same old story. We appreciate you joining us each and every week as we take a musical and visual journey through our timelines, and we look at some new stuff too, but mostly we like to go back and kind of dig up some of these gems and treasures, and I think the further away they get in the timeline, I think newer generations lose, I don't want to say that they're out of touch, but there's more and more artists that are bigger now, the Taylor Swifts, all that kind of stuff, the Harry Styles, and they're the popular things of the day. And stuff from the 70s and 80s, honestly, is older than oldies, right? So, but we don't look at rock music that way. But you find that a lot of these, like I think we've said this many times, a lot of these young people out there today are turned on by it. I mean, they actually like the old stuff, so that's really cool. That's a shot in the arm for us. I think that we're actually and I think the resurgence of vinyl kind of validates that.
Yeah,
because people are going back and getting the older records as well, and because they're cheaper than buying a reissue. You can just get the original for a lot cheaper from a bargain bin record store. So we're going to be talking about. I haven't said this in a while. Rock and Roll 101, right? This album should be part of everybody's rock and roll education.
Amen to that.
This is a must-have, and it was a must. This was one of those ones, along with Fleetwood Mac, when you're flipping through someone's record collection back in the 70s through the 80s. This album, iconic album cover, even if you didn't know what it was, this was one of those iconic album covers to start off with, right? It's just like we said. Also, we've lamented that album cover art back then was a thing. It was a part of part and parcel of the whole experience. And the Boston album cover is just one of those icons of the upside down guitar with Boston in a dome on top of it. They're carrying it wherever they're going.
It most certainly was. It was definitely part of the imagination of it too. Like your mind starts to drift, and you're looking at this piece of art.
Yeah,
what is this? Right, and it draws you in. It's a perfect marketing tool, of course. But more than that, it's a shame that kind of fell by the wayside. Now it's streaming. I mean, yeah, this stuff pops up. You could look at this stuff on Spotify. The album covers pop up, but it's not the same. It's having it in your hand and just marveling at the artistry of this stuff. And these guys,
and those artists were great from the 70s. I mean, they were just kind of on another
absolutely
level.
Were
Just imagination and just kind of interpreting. What you look at the cover for the Boston album, you're like, well, what is this? What is this music about? There's a whole bunch of guitars, but they're like upside down and they're spaceship type things and they're carrying things away. And it's like, okay, is this futuristic music? Actually not. It's not futuristic music. It is.
How many album covers dealt with science fiction, right? Space,
everything,
and everything, right? And this is before Star Wars too.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, come on. I mean, it was definitely in the consciousness of
oh yeah, absolutely. Of just futuristic or what, rock and roll kind of dealt with that kind of stuff. Outer space, just the artwork was just kind of more fantastic. We'll put it that way. It's just kind of like a really type of. It wasn't usually realistic art. It was just usually fantastic stuff, beasts and animals and all this great stuff. And this one was one of them. And oddly enough, the band does not appear on the front; they appear on the back. But the story of Boston, which we'll get into, is a little bit of a story of subterfuge and kind of distracting your record label, which we'll get into as well. But let's get into the stats first before we get into this very interesting the story of this band that really wasn't a band. This was released in August of 1976. As we said, the year's bicentennial. It was 200. USA was 200 years old.
I remember it well.
It was such a big thing. There was so much going on for the bicentennial.
Probably the best, my favorite summer as a kid. I when I think back, one of my favorite memories of that year, that summer was fantastic.
I actually have a certificate in the little town of Dobbs Ferry, New York, where I hail from. At the waterfront, because it's a river town, they had a bell ringing ceremony. So everyone brought a bell down there.
Oh,
and
really?
And there's a picture of me at the bell ringing ceremony. But I think I actually they gave out a certificate like, hey, you participated in the bicentennial bell ringing ceremony. I'll have to
that's
dig
cool.
that out. No one gives a shit about it, but it's something I'll have to give it.
This was 2 years before I moved there. I'm still in Yonkers.
We were heralding you. We were calling you like Galactus. We were ringing the bell to get your attention.
But there I was on the waterfront, though.
On the waterfront,
watching the ships, the Operation Sail. That was
such a big thing with the bicentennial.
Oh man, yeah, that was so great. Yeah.
Very, very patriotic time. This came out right after the August following the 4th of July. Produced by John Boylan and Tom Scholz, and Tom Scholz will figure prominently into this conversation. There were 3 singles released. More Than a Feeling hit number 5. Foreplay / Long Time hit number 22, and Peace of Mind hit number 38. So they kind of started off strong and kind of slid down, interestingly enough. It hit number 3 on Billboard. Here comes the heavy hitter, though. 18 times platinum, over 18 million copies sold. And the second best, it was at the time the best, but it is now the second best selling debut album in the United States. And the number 1 is, hint, we did a show about it. Hint, we had a guest with it. Hint, it wasn't Nirvana.
Pearl Jam. No. Good Lord.
Close. Guns N' Roses.
Sorry.
Guns N' Roses is the biggest selling debut album of all time, but Boston was the second biggest. So this was no joke in the 70s.
This album? Oh no.
Yeah.
No.
This is kind of if my kid walked up to me and said, "Hey, Dad, what was music like in the 70s?" I'd be like, first of all, I ain't your father. I don't have any kids. I don't know what you're talking about, but I'll answer your question for you anyway. And I would honestly, if I had to pick one album that represented the 70s, honestly, I think it would be this one.
Really?
I think so. Surprising. I think this kind of encapsulates like everything.
You don't think ELO? You don't?
No,
New World Record?
No. I think this album is like the 70s encapsulated. Honestly,
I would agree. I think it's one of them. I don't think it's the.
If I had to pick one out, this would be a strong contender for. This is a representative of rock music in the 70s. Probably like the pinnacle of production, of arrangement, songwriting, singing. It has everything, and every song almost is like kind of like The Stranger from Billy Joel. Every song was like a radio or FM radio hit.
Yeah,
like you couldn't get away with this. It's short. You get in and you get out, but you get your ears rung. You get your bell rung. Talk about bicentennial.
Yeah, I wonder how many lists this album actually appears on. Top 10 desert island discs. Because it's just it has to be on multiple lists, like favorite albums of the 70s, favorite, whatever.
Easy to take this for granted, right?
Perfect debut, perfect, just perfect, period. It is that.
Yeah. And it's just one of those ones I think that I think a lot of people gloss over. You see it when you're flipping through, or if it comes up on streaming. Oh yeah, Boston. I've heard it. And I think that people gloss over it for a reason, but I think it's important to revisit it for the same reason, is to kind of like we've said on previous episodes, to reevaluate.
Yeah.
And reassess some of these albums. And I'll tell you, this is one of those ones. You kind of take Boston.
Well, I think a lot of these albums are like family members, right? You go, or maybe a significant other, right? You get, with someone so long, you could be, get a little tired of, it's just, you want to move on to something else, but you always come back, sometimes it just, and then when you do, you gain a deeper appreciation or at least a different perspective. And I find that a lot of the stuff that we talk about is, it was the stuff, it was already there. It was already saying the things that we now as adults or middle-aged men are longing to hear, you know what I mean? Like, the life experience. Now we're caught up. Now we're at that age where we could actually relate to a lot of the stuff that this stuff was saying.
Yeah. Or you just hear it so often that it's just, it's just like, oh yeah, that, Boston Meatloaf, the stuff from the 70s that was popular. It's kind of, you hear it in the background so much that you don't take the time to consider it, because you're finding something new that attracts you, that you haven't heard before, and you get into it, like like Styx or Genesis or any of the things we've liked and talked about.
Of course, it happens. You want to look for something new. It's
so this kind of gets caught. This kind of gets caught in the shuffle. I think. I think this album kind of got caught in the shuffle. Gets caught in the shuffle for a lot of people, and I think they should really give it another listen, because after listening to it like 3 or 4 times in a row, I really came away feeling like, wow, this really does represent the best of what the 70s was offering in the rock music genre, because it hit on a lot of different things, and again, for a band that really didn't, for the most part, really didn't exist. They, Tom Scholz, who we said was the producer, he got a master's degree from MIT in engineering before, and he was doing music, like kind of like fooling around in the late 60s and 70s, early 70s, and most of these songs, 6 of these songs were written between 1968 and 1975. So these musical ideas were kicking around, but he was working for the Polaroid company, which back then made instant cameras and stuff like that. So he was always, besides, so he was an engineer, but he was also an inventor. So he would invent and create his own guitar effects and pedals, which is how he developed a particular sound, just like Eddie Van Halen has a particular sound that when you hear Eddie Van Halen or Brian May, there's no one else. Tom Scholz has that Boston guitar sound, has a certain sound that only he has, because he invented the materials and the effects to make his guitar sound. And then he came up with it, and then he started his own company, Scholz Industries and Development. And he invented a groundbreaking device called the Rockman, which in the era of the Sony Walkman, the Rockman was the same size as a Sony Walkman cassette deck, but you can plug your guitar into it and headphones. It was like a portable amplifier that you could use for practicing, which revolutionized the music industry for people that were rehearsing and doing things. They didn't have to have a big amplifier, a little amplifier or anything. They could just plug in, put their headphones in and play. And so he invented the Rockman technology, which then became a whole other cottage industry. So suffice it to say, Tom Scholz is like, not only is he a great guitarist and engineer and producer, but he's also an inventor. So that kind of puts him in another league, of people. There are geniuses in the studio. They're great at this and great at that. But he's not only that, but he's saying, I need a particular sound. I'm going to invent and create the technology that will suit what I need. Because what's out there, the distortion or whatever, is not for me. And that's how he created the Boston sound, the Boston guitar sound.
How do you
squarely his?
How do you even approach something like that? What is it that you're looking for? What kind of sound do you want? How do you have that already in your head? It's
like be trial and error, right? He probably did a lot of, because he was working in his basement and he had a studio in his basement in the Boston area, hence the name of the band. But they were originally called, his band was originally called Mother's Milk.
Yeah,
and he had Brad Delp, who is the lead singer of Boston. Again, the guy. Oh, you've never heard of his name. Like, he's criminally underrated,
undersung,
underrated. Yeah. I mean, this guy actually. All you need to do is listen to this album. This is all you ever need to listen to. Like this makes the case. Like, he didn't need to work up to anything or kind of. Oh, he was. This debut album, Brad Delp just destroys. He just destroys. He goes, to quote Star Trek, he goes where no man has gone before.
That's right. With
his vocal, like how high he goes on, like on More Than a Feeling, Piece of Mind, all these songs, his voice is just in the stratosphere.
He may very well be, just from technical standard, my favorite singer, a rock singer of all time.
And no one knows him.
And nobody knows who he is. Yeah. If you say the guy from Boston.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. But
if you say his
Brad
name,
Delp, like who? No. Who's that? Electrician? No. Is that the contractor that's coming by? Like, right? It just sounds like a dude. Like, because of the nature of the existence of Boston, and when it was with Mother's Milk, they were Mother's Milk, the band before it became Boston, was in the process of getting signed, and they signed a deal for 10 albums in 6 years. And if you know anything about Boston, that is decidedly not the case with Boston.
No.
They were not very prolific. This album came out in 76. Their follow-up came out in 78. And then it wasn't until the 80s that a third album came out. So Tom Scholz was very, very much a perfectionist, very much in no rush to do anything. So when you're that kind of a creative person, everything's got to be perfect and right and this and that and the other thing. Sometimes it works against you. Sometimes you're your own worst enemy, and it slowed down the process. So basically the tracks for this album were both pretty much Tom Scholz recorded, like all the stuff himself. He did everything almost but the drums. Over time, these songs, again, 6 of the songs were kicking around. So Mother's Milk kind of did these and they were done as demos, of course, with Brad Delp as the vocalist. They get some interest. The label's like, yeah, we're kind of interested in this, but we want to make sure that this isn't just a one-man band. Like, we don't want this mad scientist type vibe going on. So they said, we need to see you guys play live. So here's where the story of Boston really starts. Is the label wants to see Boston, or Mother's Milk at the time. Then their manager said change your name to Boston, and they did. We need to see you guys play live. We want to make sure that this isn't some mad scientist guy, just like, whatever. So they recruit these members they get people that can play this music. They play live for the label, and the label's like, great, that sounds great. You've got your demos. What we need you to do is we need to re-record those demos now. We need to redo that. and we need to do it in our studio, because we want it to sound right.
Yeah.
And Tom Scholz is like, well, in his mind, he's like, no, I don't want to go to California and record. He goes, I have everything in my basement. I did it all there. Like, I don't see the point. I don't see the point in that. But the label was like, you guys got to go to California. So
they were adamant. Yeah, because your presence needs to be
and we want
felt.
It needs to be. We got to record it. Got to re-record this the right way. We need to re-record this the right way.
But he's saying it's already done the right way.
Yeah, he felt exactly. He knew. Tom Scholz felt that he knew best. So what he did, or he got his manager to kind of help him. This is where the subterfuge of this story starts. Is they send the group, the guys from Boston, they send them out to California to record the last song that is on the album. Let Me Take You Home Tonight. That was written by Brad Delp. So like, you guys go out to California and record that.
Yeah.
And this way the label thinks that the band is out there. And then meanwhile, in Boston, Tom Scholz is in the basement re-recording every single part of those demos. Except for the drums. He's re-recording it in his basement, doing That's it amazing. All over and he was upset about it. He goes, why do I have to do this over again? But they wanted good quality stuff that sounded exactly the same. So he recreated every single demo from scratch by himself. While the quote unquote band was in California in a studio recording one song. So this was a whole like kind of, 3-card Monte kind of diversionary thing where, Tom Scholz was like, I'm doing it from home. I'm just not comfortable doing it anywhere else. So then eventually what they did is once it was all done, they hired a remote truck with a 24-track console in it. And they ran the cables into his basement to hook it up so they can record everything and get the masters.
Was he now? Is it known that he was he? Did he have money to be able to do create all this stuff? I mean, he was
still working for Polaroid at the time.
Okay, so
so he took a leave of absence from Polaroid to work on this stuff. He had a master's degree in engineering, so I'm sure he was making money. I'm sure he was pretty highly placed in.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like if he's got these credentials, if he's I am an engineer, a real engineer,
not
just wow.
The label was like, we just don't want this mad scientist type thing. So he sent the band out there.
That is amazing.
And Brad Delp wanted like a new 12-string guitar, so they used some of the budget money to buy him a Martin. They had a Martin guitar made for him. And then Tom Scholz is in the basement using a $100 Yamaha acoustic guitar to record the Boston album. The album literally cost thousands to record because he did it all himself. So in a weird way, he saved a ton of money, but the label, so basically on the back of the album is Boston, but none of those, I think Sib Haitian, which was the drummer, I think he played drums on the actual album, but he had to play exactly what the other drummer played. Like he had all the sheets and everything and had to do it exactly. They had to recreate the demos exactly. I would have liked to hear those. I don't know if those demos are around. It would be interesting to hear it. Because this is amazing. The stuff that's on this album is amazing. The overlaying of the electric guitar, the acoustic guitars, everything is there. And he did have Tom Scholz. The one thing he did have a problem with is he didn't have experience in recording acoustic guitars properly. So they did have to bring somebody in to show him how to like really mic that correctly. And it shows on this because those acoustic guitars, really are a nice counterpunch to his electric guitar sound. It really kind of balances out the sound of this album.
Yeah, I agree. Yep. That's an amazing story.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
That is an absolutely amazing story. And Dean is the trivia master. He digs this stuff up, man.
It's pretty wild stuff. I always knew Tom Scholz was eccentric, and I knew he was an inventor, but I never knew that they stooped to this subterfuge.
But that's to your point, though, that these guys are so like almost like they're just so everyday, like blue collar type. They're not like rock stars. You know what I mean? They're not. They didn't. You don't know who these guys are. The names alone are just like, and the fact that this guy was, from MIT and I knew all that, but I had no idea that this was done that way. And that's just, what an incredible story.
Yeah, because he was just, he was of, you could call him a savant. I don't know what you want to call him, but he obviously is probably a Renaissance man that a lot of people don't know about, because he still has the Tom Scholz Industries company, which create, they make all kinds of effects, they make equalizers, they make all kinds of electronics. So he's well involved in that, as well as being the leader of Boston. It's his. He wrote all the songs except for the last one. And like I said, those were written over years, over a span of 68 to 75. That's 7 years.
The only other person that I know of that had those kinds of credentials was Tom Dowd, who's a fantastic. He actually, I think he built one of the first Neve consoles, and the you started using 8-track before anybody else, and he was an engineer as well, but he actually worked on the Manhattan Project, believe it or not.
Wow.
In his younger days, and then he just switched to music. So he goes, I would say, but yeah, it's just I can't imagine the mindset of trying to get things right, though, so perfect that you have to be so crazy like that to be this doesn't sound right to me. It's got to be done this way and this way. And you could definitely tell, on the album, everything's sort of double tracked in such a way, in such a meticulous way.
The guitars have a double tracking. The vocals, Brad Delp double tracked his own backing vocal. So he's the only voice on this album. Is when you hear
the only voice, and there's harmonies on this that are outrageous.
Yeah. And it's all him. It's all Brad Delp. So and that's the thing, is they finished, Tom Scholz finished all the tracks. They uploaded them to that truck. They recorded the masters. Then they sent them out to California. And then Brad Delp just in no time at all just laid the vocals down. Because you can hear he's almost like a Mickey Thomas. Like Mickey Thomas is another person no one knows his name, but they know his voice. Like Fooled Around and Fell in Love, and that guy can belt. And Brad Delp is of the same cut. Of vocalists that it sounds effortless, even though his voice is in the heavens. It still sounds effortless. It doesn't sound like he's straining to do it. It doesn't sound like he's straining to hit the notes that he hits. It seems like his voice just he flips the switch and it just the afterburner kicks on.
Yeah, there's no effort. There absolutely isn't no effort. Yeah. I mean, or at least it seems that way.
And that's what's great about it. That's what's great about listening to it is he goes so high, but it doesn't feel he shouldn't have done that. It's just he just goes there and you're like, whoa. And then he goes up even higher, and more than a feeling, he goes even higher. And
some of the guitar, wow. And even he goes even higher than some of the guitar notes that Scholz is playing too, right? You think that that's just,
Tom, one of the things that in listening to this album, I picked up the a Tom Scholz. I guess it's a gimmick that he uses, and if you listen for it, you'll hear it on a lot of the songs. He does something. I think what he's doing, I think he's taking the pick and running it up and down the strings, because you get this shoo, shoo, kind of noise.
Yeah,
and it shows up in a lot. Yeah, and it shows up in a lot of. I've noted because I listen to it so much. I'm like, that thing that he does shows that. I'm like, well, that's part of the Boston sound. Is that effect he gets of running the pick up and down the strings, and it sounds like a phaser, or it sounds like something weird, but it's in a lot of the songs.
Of course, the way he modified that sound, himself. But I think he gets that from the fact that he really was into a lot of guitar-driven music from the '60s too, the Kinks, and I think and Townsend used to do that as well. And that. But when he does it, it sounds like something from outer space. Like you're right.
Yeah, it's got this weird futuristic sound, and it's so strange. Oddly enough, you mentioned,
and I wonder how many takes it took to get that sound right, just right.
or what did he have to invent?
Indeed,
the guitar to make that. The bigger question is, what did he have to invent to get the guitar to sound like that? Because of course he's not going to buy anything off the shelf.
Right.
You talk about influences from the 70s. Did you ever hear of a band called The Left Bank?
I did. It sounds familiar. I don't
They
know. I'm not
had
familiar with
one
their.
big hit, "Walk Away Renee," the original,
Yes.
not the
Okay.
Four
Yep.
Tops cover, which is really good, but the original "Walk Away Renee." More Than a Feeling was inspired by that. He was actually inspired a lot by the group The Left Bank, who was known as there was a lot of different kind of pop music, and I actually have their greatest hits because I was obsessed with Walk Away Renee a few years ago. I used to listen to it over and over. And they have a type of pop music called Baroque pop. It kind of had almost had like a harpsichord-y type stuff in it in their stuff. And back then he was listening to Walk Away Renee, and that kind of inspired More Than a Feeling. Some of the chord progressions actually mimic exactly parts of Walk Away Renee.
I'm thinking about it right now. Let's the song is, I'm running the song through my mind.
It doesn't match. They sound
it doesn't
match.
I'm thinking of the chorus, but I'm
walk away, Renee.
Yeah.
Don't see me follow you back home. That's all you're getting. I'm not singing anymore. But it doesn't. I don't see it. But that's from what I've read that he,
I'm gonna experiment with that tonight after the I'm gonna listen to both and
you won't hear it because Walk Away Renee is nothing like More Than a there's really nothing like More Than a Feeling, but
I'll take the challenge.
Yeah.
I'll find something, I'm sure.
I'll take the Pepsi challenge with this.
But no, that's
Pulp Fiction.
But but I know he was a big into classical music as well.
Yeah. Oh yeah, there's a lot of that. People pick this, once something becomes really popular, the critics and music people start to pick it apart of, well, why? And then, he's using these modalities, and this is Baroque, and this is that, and who knows? Mm-hmm. Maybe I wouldn't put it past him because he seems like he's a pretty smart guy. So he doesn't seem like he's an off the street guy that's just making this up. He probably has some of those influences and studied it. I'm sure he seems like that kind of a person.
Yeah,
it's very logical with it. But again, bringing it full bear, the full bore into rock and roll, where you don't even realize it.
When you think about classical music, though, I mean, it's mathematical, isn't it? I mean, there's a lot of the prog bands are like that as well. They think in a whole different level. They're not just creating a feeling. They're creating. Rush does it with we talked about that with Neil Peart's drumming, and everything's like it has an actual equation that you can write down on the board. I'll never be able to fathom that kind of thinking. Like it just
and some of that is in Boston. Actually, some of that I don't want to call it mathematics, but some of that forethought is in this music, because Tom Scholz was a big proponent of that, of changing things up. Of all of a sudden the guitar kicks in.
I am 100% curious to see whether or not you could actually take what Tom Scholz has written and feed it to AI and see what a computer, like an AI computer, would come up with, and see if it would come up with the same sound or it would recreate what he created.
Probably
that would be an interesting
it would be a pale imitation.
You think?
Yeah, because he is a singular, this, and that's why this album is so important in rock and roll, because it has a singular sound that nobody had nobody had it before, nobody had it after, because no one really tried. This was the heyday of those bands, of the Foreigner, of Journey, Boston. All these guys were like Meatloaf. This was like the major leagues, and a lot of people probably don't realize, like, back then these guys were all like in their prime. It was like young Lou Gramm, like ripping it up in Foreigner, young Steve Perry tearing it up in Journey. This was like, all the greats were hitting at the same time, but no one really tried to imitate. Like Boston had a particular sound, and Foreigner had a particular sound that it didn't seem like anybody tread on anybody else's turf. It's kind of like everybody had.
I totally agree.
That's like Lou Gramm had a particular great he's a great vocalist as well, right? And he has he had a particular style, and Foreigner had a particular sound that no one really kind of really copied. And Aerosmith and all these guys kind of respected each other, because they were all doing something unique, but it was all in the same arena of this hard rock and roll. And it was just a great, it was a great time for this type of music. And I think this album is emblematic. I think it's the standard bearer.
Great rock and roll, but like we always say, or at least I always say, pushing it further.
Yeah.
Right. Pushing the boundaries of what rock and roll could be and exploring new territory with added vocals and keyboards and all this lushness, this actually, is there such a thing as overproduction? Absolutely. But in these cases, I think no.
Yeah, no. This isn't it. This is an embarrassment of riches, because you've got on the first side you only have 3 songs, but technically 4, because Foreplay and Long Time is kind of like a instrumental thing. He's drawing comparisons from critics to Yes on the beginning of Foreplay. He's like he's doing Yes better than Yes could do it. Like
That's right.
like really kind of taking those textures, but applying it to whatever the Boston blueprint is. And then it goes into Long Time. I mean, it's just the way this album flows. Like, this is a summer of 19. This is it. Like, this is summer music. You put this shit on, and as soon as it gets warm out, and you're in your car driving, there is nothing better in life. There is nothing better in life than listening to this type of music when you got the right frame of mind, and you put this. And this is an easy thing. This is a no-brainer. You can listen to this thing. It takes you by the hand. You do not have to struggle to listen to this album. It is not. You just put it on, and it'll take you the whole way. Mm-hmm. That's the great thing about great music is when it's like this, and it just flows one after the other, and you don't have to fight it. You just kind of go with it. There's nothing better. And
it's interesting. When you talk about Foreplay and how great
the song.
And grand.
I'm talking about the song. Just to be clear.
Yes.
Okay.
just to be clear. What a master class of the thing that I love most is the piano. When that bass, those bass notes in the piano, like when they kick in, like it's not a bass guitar, it's a piano, man. That is who every time you hear piano in the 70s, it's like ding 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 ding, like this bright, but nobody's going.
He's all the way down on the keys,
all on the register, and it's amazing. That's my favorite moment.
Yeah. Here we go. Just so you get an idea of Tom Scholz. Here's what he on this album: lead and rhythm guitar, acoustic guitar, special guitar effects, bass, organ, clavinet, percussion, and then of course producer and engineer.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody else was just kind of they were kind of there extra.
Yeah.
Again, he needed people to have an actual band called Boston to go out on the road and do this stuff, and that's what they were. But this was one of those kind of one-man band kind of concern type thing, like a Todd Rundgren. I always think of.
Yeah.
Todd Rundgren doesn't need anybody, but if he's going to go out on tour, he needs people.
He needs a band
to help. These days, he probably doesn't. He probably can just do everything with sequencing and just got a guide
or
just to trigger stuff.
You said Tom Rundgren.
Todd Rundgren.
You didn't go for your boy. You didn't Jeff Lynne. Lynne this
because I always thought that because Todd Rundgren always seemed like he was interested in technology as well, right?
Okay.
And so that's
Jeff
why
Lynne's not.
He's interested in production, but I always, like the way Tom Scholz is interested in like the electronics and the creation of stuff.
Yeah.
And Todd Rundgren always struck me as that type of a person too, that was always interested in like the, not just the production and doing it yourself, but kind of the whole ball of wax, everything that's involved with it. So I was, like I kind of think of those guys, and like Frank Zappa was a guy like that too. Like he could do everything, but he's also interested in how it's created or creating an instrument that didn't exist before, type thing. Yeah. Like those type of guys, like the like they're all on the same level, but then the guys that kind of make their own stuff, kind of that's like a little cherry on the top for them. So Todd Rundgren, I always picture like that, on the cutting edge of the technology and using all the craziness and doing not afraid to really go in weird places with it. So that's why. That's
gonna be our next episode. Something anything. That's another amazing record. Yeah. So, but anyway.
Yeah. So Todd Rundgren was able to get away with it apparently. But Tom Scholz was an unknown factor. So they said we need people. And especially if this guy's in his basement in Boston, they're like, probably like, what the hell? Like, it's not like he's in a studio. He's in his home basement recording this stuff. So I can see where the label kind of be like, okay, we don't need another kind of crazy dude, lurking around. So we got to make sure this is legit. So show us a band. Show us Boston that they're a real thing.
Yeah.
Let's go to the street, put the ads in the paper. We need a guitarist, we need a bassist, we need a drummer, because we have Tom Scholz, we have Brad Delp is all we have.
Yeah.
And oddly enough, the guy that I think it was John Boylan, the guy producer, or it might have been someone else that was assigned to help Tom Scholz with this subterfuge. Mm-hmm. This album did so well for Epic, which is a subsidiary of CBS Records, that the guy got promoted to like the vice president of the West Coast or something, based on this album, based on what this album did for Epic Records and the sales.
Yeah. Sure. Mm-hmm.
The guy was like a producer, and he immediately got like, well, okay, you're now in charge.
That's all it takes, right? Yeah, just one. Yeah, that's one thing.
This
right?
wasn't
just
a hit.
Idea.
This wasn't even a home run. This was like a grand slam.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It is, and we can't even go over favorite tracks, because it's just like, this is like one of those things. It's like the whole thing.
Yep.
It's not a concept album like when we did Dark Side of the Moon. Like, you have to listen to it, right? You can't just listen to tracks. You can do this, but I don't see why you would want to with this album. I think you just let it roll. Just let it roll. Especially if it's on streaming, just put it on. You don't have to. It's 37 minutes. Just go with it, because you're going to get, a time capsule of what the best of what the 70s was really doing. Like we had said in previous episodes, the tools were learned in the 60s. Now we're applying them in the 70s, and this is the kind of magic you got on vinyl.
There's no, it's a very easy listen, and it's going to take you places that, frankly, you're. I'm not even going to say it, but
it's hard. You know what? It's almost hard to concentrate. Like this album, you have to listen to it a couple times, because you get distracted by Brad Delp's vocals. Then you're missing the guitar playing. It's kind of like you can't. It's hard to pay attention to both. So for me, I had to listen to it a couple of times, because I'm like, I get mesmerized and distracted by what Brad Delp is doing and the upper register he's hitting. Then I'm like, well, I'm missing what all the guitar stuff and all the intricate layers that I like to listen to, and I had to go back and kind of go, okay, well, now I need to re-listen to it with a different set of ears and kind of approach it from the guitar parts now and the production. Yeah. It's an embarrassment. It's an embarrassment of riches. So they would, and their follow-up.
I apologize.
That's okay. He's
I'm getting over a cold, folks. So
what? Yeah, it's like 80 degrees out in February.
Well, that's what's hitting me today. It's I don't know if it's like still getting over a cold, but it's all like loose now. So like today, I had all the windows open. And so now it's more of an allergic thing. So it's like, it's all like, so I apologize for the coughing and the sucking on the candy and
the Ricola.
So
2 years later, their follow-up would come out, which was called Don't Look Back. Eagerly awaited. Not the same. It was the same. It was the same, but it wasn't the same, which was probably the problem with it. Is they tried to, there was a Boston sound and they kind of went in on it. It sold 7 million copies, which is really good, but compared to 17 million, it's not. It was kind of a swing and a miss. Although, like I said, 7 million copies shouldn't be that way, and it hit number one on the Billboard charts. So it did better because it was eagerly anticipated. But it was And it was supposed to be, Don't Look Back was originally supposed to be called Arrival, which makes sense with the whole guitar spaceships thing. But
sorry,
that's okay. But a band called ABBA had an album called Arrival. So Boston was like, yeah, we can't use that. We can't use it, so we'll call it Don't Look Back. So that came out in 78. 86, right? 8 years later would be their third album. So Tom Scholz became like a, kind of really a perfectionist. Nothing was good enough. He even told the touring members of Boston after 1978, he goes, it might be a while. So if you have other things you want to do, go do them. He literally said that. He said this next one could take a while. So don't hold your breath waiting for Boston to reform. And they did in 1986 with Third Stage, which was a hit. It was a big hit. It was kind of a big comeback, hit number one. Boston still had it. They had that song Amanda, a couple of other ones, but it still doesn't,
not the same. But to
not
me,
the
it was
same.
even...
I was surprised. I was surprised in the 80s that Boston, I was like, oh, Boston is like has an album coming out, and people were receptive of it, but it's still, the first one was just,
it was too good
in a bottle.
I think it was just too.
They peaked on the first one.
They already did, and
kind of like Guns N' Roses peaked on the debut album.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's a curse.
That's right.
You knock it out of the park that hard. You don't have anything to work up to. It's hard, then you start second guessing yourself, right? Oh, this got to be perfect. I got to get this right. And then if you get too much in your head, that could become a problem. That's what happened with Axl Rose. It became, everything needed to be redone, and it's not right, and it's not perfect enough. And that pressure, besides being a perfectionist, then you've got that pressure that you're probably putting on yourself of trying to get it so it's perfect, and you can't chase that. I think that's why the first album was just like, it was perfect. It was years in development, but it was demos and this and that. And by the time it was recorded, people were ready for it.
Yes, our resident friend Dwight Burke, who is famously on the Wheel of Names
on our live show.
On our live shows, we named the wheel after him, actually, because he always wins. Probably the biggest Boston fan I know. And he would not shut up about this group. And, he loved the first two albums. And I every time, I would see him, he's like, I'm still waiting for that third album. It's coming. And, it finally did. He was so elated. I've never seen anybody so excited about a brand new album that came so late after, we're talking like 7 years, 8 years. Yeah.
And
that's
times,
a long time.
And when you're talking 78 to 86, music changed in a big way.
Yeah.
Like
that's right.
That was an interesting time span of time to wait to put out new music, and especially to put out new music that sounded like the old music. Boston didn't try and adapt to the maybe with technology they did, but not with the sound. They weren't trying to sound like Culture Club and Flock of Seagulls. Right. They were still doing their thing. So it was interesting that audiences were very receptive, and it went to number one, but it wasn't the smash. Yeah. It was Third Stage, 4 times platinum. Again, not bad. That's still good. That's still great. But when you put it up against 17, it's not
by reputation.
You've set the bar really high to begin with. So the record company is going to be like, okay, here's our cash cow. Here comes the bonuses. Unless you do a Fleetwood Mac and we're not doing the same thing. But Boston tried to replicate it.
But for some people, I guess that's enough, right? I mean, if they don't want it to be different. For some people, I want the same sound. I want to keep
exploring within that thing, and that's what Tom Scholz does, and that's what he continues to do. I mean, Boston continued to put out albums. Unfortunately, we lost Brad Delp a few years ago. Took his own life. A tragic loss because I don't think he ever got the due.
No, he didn't.
I don't think he ever got the due. Did Boston get into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame?
Did he try to go out on his own? I'm sure he probably, tried to do some things, outside.
He's done this and that, but it was never,
That's a shame because he could have been in any band and would have benefited that band greatly.
Yeah,
I think
he could have been definitely like a gun for hire. Boston got into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2018, so they did get one of those bands from the 70s that usually never get nominated because again their body of work is based on really honestly it's this album, but this is all you need.
Well, can you imagine with someone of his talent that it's a shame that people a lot of these older folk like Brian Wilson, for example, when he did Smile, when he went out and he hired other singers it's not the Beach Boys, it's hired guns, It would have been a shame to have not somebody like Brad Delp have that vocal, like, that presence in something like that. I'm not saying that
no one took advantage of that.
No one took advantage of his talent, and that's a shame.
Yeah, really I think he was, because he was so tied to Boston. I mean, that was his gig, but again, they should have been more prolific. I think that would have benefited them if they were more prolific, because they could have kind of gotten some traction and gotten into some type of a groove and kind of figured something out. But when you're sporadic like that, 3 albums, and back then they were, back in the 70s, you were cranking out an album a year. That was like the expectation. Like I said in the beginning, they signed a contract for 10 albums in like 6 years, or 6 albums in 10 years, whatever it was.
Yeah.
A lot of content. And he just didn't, provide it. Just kind of like, I'm going to do this on my own time. So go, if you're doing something, go do it. I'll call you when I'm ready. That's not a good way.
No, it's not.
I mean, it's obviously his way, right? And it feels right to him, but you got other people. You got Brad Delp, I think the guitarist for Boston, the live guy, he put out his own album and he had Brad Delp on it, and Brad Delp sang on it, and they kind of promoted it as, oh, here's the guys from Boston, kind of thing. And then Tom Scholz wasn't happy about that. It's like, well, I'm pretty much the guitar sound of Boston, and this guy, is not.
Yeah, right.
Kind of, he plays live.
And people would hear it probably would have been like, oh, that's that Tom Scholz has lost it.
Yeah,
is that like, Tom Scholz? I can't be.
Yeah, this sucks, or whatever. I never listened to it, but he got upset about that. He's like, yeah, no, you can't really say that you're the sound of Boston, because you're not. It's this one guy. So this is, this is an album everybody needs to listen to. And if it's one that you've been like, oh yeah, they're doing Boston, go listen to it again. Like we try to, I try and give it a fresh listen. I try and shed some of the preconceived notions I have. And for the most part, it works. I come away with something new. And with Boston, I absolutely did. I kind of really, really sat there and didn't give it the 70s classic rock, take it for granted attitude. Mm-hmm. I'm like, let me, because when it comes up on Spotify, sometimes I'll skip through. I'm like, yeah, okay, hitching a ride or whatever. It's like, yeah, but sitting down and just listening to it and really giving it the attention, I'm like, this is it. This epitomizes the 70s.
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely one. I mean, and like I said, it's definitely an album that would most likely. I think about Desert Island. I hate the term like Desert Island. Like, what? First of all, if you're on a desert island, how are you going to play albums? If you're stranded on a desert island?
Oh, I can answer that question.
Okay, answer the question.
If you have the professor from Gilligan's Island, he can make a fucking record player out of coconuts.
There you go.
He'll make a record player out of coconuts for you.
Okay.
Little buddy.
But my thing is, like, if your house was on fire, okay, and you had your record collection was right in front of you. You were sitting there and you had to get out of your house quick, and everything was like right there. What albums would you pick off the shelf? If you can only pick,
I don't know if I'd be sitting there thumbing through if the house is on fire.
Well, I'm just saying, like, if you had to leave your house, or if you had, okay, like, that's a little extreme. But if you had
Eric, will you get the fuck out of there? The house is burning down. Hang on, I'm only up to the G's. Hang on, I
can't decide. I can't
decide if it's going to be Duke or Abacab. Hang on.
No, but if you had to, like, you had to leave, like, let's say you had to, like,
yes,
but you did have some time to pick 10 albums that you had to take with you,
Yeah.
It'd be curious. And I think this album would be, I'd make a strong case, was definitely be.
Or for musical education. I think this is something that, if people are looking to learn about, what was this like? And what really kind of really epitomizes it. I think, again, I said it 15 times during this episode. I really think this is one of those ones that just kind of,
and this is when people
a high watermark for this type of music.
I'm not saying that people don't care today. I don't want to say that. I'm not, I'm not going to be that curmudgeon, kind of guy, whatever. But people like this who actually, when they take the time to create your own sound, you create your own thing, and albums mattered back then, right? I mean, you like the experience of listening to an entire record was, you take a half hour of your day to do that. I just, I wish young people can experience that today.
I hope they are.
I wish they could. I hope they are. I hope that when they do listen to something, even on streaming, please listen to the whole thing. Not
public service announcement from the 3324 podcast. Please listen to the whole thing. Do us that favor. Don't skip.
Are we going there? I mean, by the way, we're getting older that we're kind of that now. Do you think
you are?
You think
you're getting grumpier?
Am I getting grumpier? Okay. I apologize if I don't want to offend. I don't want to. I'm not trying to be that guy.
You know what it is that that's our perspective, right? It is what it is. It's a perspective, and hopefully, because things have changed so much, it's consumed in a different way, right? So what we're doing is just advocating for people to kind of look at these things in a different light, especially for this kind of older material. It was meant to be consumed as such, and that's what what you're advocating for, is just kind of consume it the way it was meant to be, right? The way it was intended. This was these albums were, these artists kind of created this whole thing. Not that they don't today, but again, it seems like a lost art of, like you're saying, it's like a lost art of sitting and just kind of checking it out and going on the trip and not having it on while you're cooking and cleaning and doing other things. We use the music as a distraction while we're doing other things, as opposed to just sitting and listening.
There's just so much going on, though. That everything is so busy and so fast paced today. That it's a shame that people can't take the time sometimes to just relax and just chill out.
And in the middle of that fast paced is Eric taking his hat off and throwing it up in the air like Mary Tyler Moore and freeze framing on him.
Okay,
you're gonna make it. You're gonna make it after all.
Oh goodness. Okay. Oh,
so I think that's gonna do it. Check this out. It's available on the streaming platforms. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Go check this one out. It's a slam dunk. This is what the show is about. Is this kind of stuff? Is kind of introducing it to people again, even to people that probably grew up with it. Listen to it again and kind of really let it take you back if it needs to. But I think it's a very strong indicator of where music was at this point. And it's just such a sterling, shining example of production, soup to nuts, everything it's got it. So that's going to do it. You can check us out on social media if you like. We're on Instagram and Facebook. I didn't do it in the beginning, so I'm doing it at the end. And if you're watching us on YouTube and you've made it this far, go ahead and hit the like and subscribe button. That will help support the channel as well. And new episodes come out every week, so there's more to come, much more to come. So that's going to do it for this episode. And you know what that means, Eric? That means we're done.
We are done.
We are done.
I have nothing more to say. I couldn't even say it even if I wanted to. So
we're gonna leave it there, but we will certainly see you real soon. And for Eric, this has been Dean, and we will catch you on the flip side.
You've been listening to the 3324 podcast with Dean Legiro and Eric Kuber. You can find us on your favorite podcast provider, so please like, subscribe, and rate to become a part of the 3324 family. Your feedback is important, so make sure to follow us on Instagram and Facebook at 3324 podcast and on Twitter at 3324p to join the conversation.